Mira Jensen didn't plan to text a billionaire. She only wanted her son to stop crying. It was past midnight, the kind of cold, hollow hour where even the city outside seemed to hold its breath. Mira sat on the floor of her apartment's tiny kitchen, her legs pulled up to her chest, a threadbare baby blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The lights were off, not because she wanted it dark, but because the power company didn't do sympathy extensions. Noah cried from the bedroom. His bottle had been mostly water tonight. Mira tried not to look at the empty can of formula sitting on the counter. She picked up her phone with shaky hands, thumb hovering over her brother's contact. Ben had helped before. Not happily, but he had. She didn't want to ask again. But tonight wasn't about pride. It was about a baby who didn't understand why his stomach hurt. She typed, "Ben, I'm sorry to bother you again. I need $50 for formula. Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday. I'll pay you back, please." Her thumb trembled as she hit send. She didn't double-check the number. She didn't even look at the name. She just set the phone down, dropped her forehead to her knees, and waited. 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "I think you meant to send that to someone else." Mira blinked, sat up, grabbed the phone, and stared in horror. One wrong digit. She'd texted a stranger. Her stomach dropped. "I'm so sorry," she typed. "Please ignore. Wrong number." She locked the screen, tossed the phone aside, pulled the blanket tighter. Another failure added to the pile. 3 blocks away, from the top floor of a penthouse that looked down on half the city, Jackson Albright stared at the message on his private phone. He never gave this number out. No press, no assistance, only family. And that list had gotten shorter every year. The text wasn't spam. It wasn't a scam. It was raw and real. He looked at the message again, reading between the lines. "Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday." It wasn't just a request. It was a mother negotiating with her own dignity. You should have ignored it. Most nights he would have. Instead, he typed back, "Is your baby going to be okay?" Mira stared at the message. What kind of stranger follows up like that? Her first instinct was to block him, but something about the question, about how simply it was asked, made her pause. "We'll manage," she wrote. "Sorry again." "I can help," came the reply. "No strings." She scoffed aloud. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers." "Smart policy. I'm Jackson now. I'm not a stranger." She didn't reply. She rocked Noah back to sleep. She cried quietly, with the kind of grief that doesn't come from just being broke, but from being tired of being broke. And Mira Jensen didn't plan to text a billionaire. She only wanted her son to stop crying. It was past midnight, the kind of cold, hollow hour where even the city outside seemed to hold its breath. Mira sat on the floor of her apartment's tiny kitchen, her legs pulled up to her chest, a threadbare baby blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The lights were off, not because she wanted it dark, but because the power company didn't do sympathy extensions. Noah cried from the bedroom. His bottle had been mostly water tonight. Mira tried not to look at the empty can of formula sitting on the counter. She picked up her phone with shaky hands, thumb hovering over her brother's contact. Ben had helped before. Not happily, but he had. She didn't want to ask again. But tonight wasn't about pride. It was about a baby who didn't understand why his stomach hurt. She typed, "Ben, I'm sorry to bother you again. I need $50 for formula. Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday. I'll pay you back, please." Her thumb trembled as she hit send. She didn't double-check the number. She didn't even look at the name. She just set the phone down, dropped her forehead to her knees, and waited. 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "I think you meant to send that to someone else." Mira blinked, sat up, grabbed the phone, and stared in horror. One wrong digit. She'd texted a stranger. Her stomach dropped. "I'm so sorry," she typed. "Please ignore. Wrong number." She locked the screen, tossed the phone aside, pulled the blanket tighter. Another failure added to the pile. 3 blocks away, from the top floor of a penthouse that looked down on half the city, Jackson Albright stared at the message on his private phone. He never gave this number out. No press, no assistance, only family. And that list had gotten shorter every year. The text wasn't spam. It wasn't a scam. It was raw and real. He looked at the message again, reading between the lines. "Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday." It wasn't just a request, it was a mother negotiating with her own dignity. You should have ignored it. Most nights he would have. Instead, he typed back, "Is your baby going to be okay?" Mira stared at the message. What kind of stranger follows up like that? Her first instinct was to block him, but something about the question, about how simply it was asked, made her pause. "We'll manage," she wrote. "Sorry again." "I can help," came the reply. "No strings." She scoffed aloud. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers." "Smart policy. I'm Jackson now. I'm not a stranger." She didn't reply. She rocked Noah back to sleep. She cried quietly, with the kind of grief that doesn't come from just being broke, but from being tired of being broke. And then she did something she never thought she'd do. She sent him her Venmo. 3 seconds later, her phone buzzed again. $5,000 received from Jackson Albright. Mira sat frozen. She blinked twice, opened the app, checked again. $5,000. "This is too much," she typed. "I only needed $50. It's already yours, no catch. One less thing to worry about." She didn't cry when she got laid off. She didn't cry when they repossessed her car. She didn't cry when Noah's father ghosted her after finding out she was pregnant. But this broke her. Her hands shook. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just take care of Noah." And then she noticed it. She never told him her son's name. Mira couldn't sleep. Even after Noah finally drifted off, his full belly slowing his breathing into tiny, peaceful puffs, she sat wide awake on the edge of her mattress, holding her phone like it might vanish. She reread the transfer screen again. $5,000. Still there, still real. For a long time, she just stared at it, wondering, daring herself to believe this wasn't a scam, that it wasn't bait for something darker, that this stranger, this man who called himself Jackson, didn't have some quiet plan to call in a favor later. People don't just send thousands of dollars to strangers. At least they never had to her. She opened their chat again, scrolling back to that last message. Just take care of Noah. No emoji, no ... hesitation, just simple, certain. That's what scared her the most, how certain he seemed like this kind of thing was normal for him. She typed something, then deleted, typed again, deleted again. Finally, she wrote, "You didn't have to do that." A moment passed, then another. Her phone stayed dark. She exhaled slowly, almost relieved. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe it really was a one-time fluke, and she could just pretend none of it happened. The phone buzzed. "I know I didn't. I wanted to." Across the city, Jackson Albright leaned back in the leather chair that had never once made him comfortable. He was still in the office. He always stayed late, not because he had to, but because home didn't feel like home. Anymore. Not since he shut that thought down. The glass walls of his penthouse office reflected the skyline like a painting. Cold, expensive, empty. His phone buzzed again. "Why would you help someone like me? You don't even know me." He stared at the words longer than he should have. Most people who messaged him wanted things. Partnerships, investments, favors, sometimes influence. This was the first time in a long time someone asked honestly why he cared. So he told her the truth, or at least part of it. Because once upon a time, someone helped me when they didn't have to. I've never forgotten that. There was a pause. "Then I want to pay you back." His brow lifted. "For what?" "For the formula." "For the kindness?" "For not ignoring me." Another beat. "I'll figure it out." Jackson's jaw clenched slightly. She didn't ask for more. Didn't hint at needing a job or rent or anything else. She was still holding her pride with both hands, even while drowning. He respected that more than he expected. So he sent one more message. "Tell me what kind of formula Noah needs. I want to send more. Not money. Supplies." Mira hesitated. "Only if it's really no strings." "I don't do strings," he replied. "Strings are for people playing games." The next morning, Mira woke to a knock on the door. Her heart stopped. No one ever knocked. Not here. The landlord texted, and her neighbors barely looked her way. She pulled on a hoodie, quietly walked to the door, and peeked through the peephole. Delivery truck? Uniformed driver holding 4 massive boxes. What the... She opened the door slowly. "Delivery for Mira Jensen?" he asked. She nodded mutely. "Signature here." She signed. She opened the boxes one by one on the living room floor, hands trembling. Formula, diapers, baby wipes, bottles, organic puree packets, even clothes. Not cheap off-brand either. The kind of stuff you only saw on Instagram moms with perfect lighting and too much free time. At the very bottom was a small envelope. She opened it slowly. He should have what he needs. Noah deserves better than barely getting by. Jackson. There was no logo, no return address, no way to trace where it had been ordered from, just a signature she didn't recognize from a man she hadn't even seen. But she felt it in her chest, this strange, uncertain warmth that sat somewhere between gratitude and suspicion. Who was this man? And what did he really want? Mira didn't touch the boxes again for hours. They sat in the corner of the living room like a dream she didn't want to wake from. Noah had fallen asleep in her arms after a warm bottle, his first full one in 3 days, and she hadn't moved since. She just sat there, staring at her son's chest rising and falling, wondering what kind of world she'd just stepped into. She wasn't naive. People didn't do things like this, not without a catch, not without a camera rolling. But there was no viral video, no receipt, just silence. And that name again, Jackson. Not exactly common. Mira reached for her phone and opened a browser. She hesitated. She didn't want to know, but she had to know. She typed Jackson Albright. The results loaded faster than she was ready for. Jackson Albright, CEO of Helix Court Industries, net worth $11.8 billion USD, private tech mogul, former military, media shy, widowed, no children. Her stomach flipped. This wasn't just some generous stranger. This was him, the billionaire who owned half the patents in AI medicine, the one reporters called the ghost mogul because he avoided interviews like the plague. There were only 3 official photos of him online, all serious, unsmiling. One showed him walking out of a Senate hearing with cold eyes and a clenched jaw. The man didn't just live in another world, he built it. So why was he texting her? Why did he send $5,000 in baby supplies to a woman with no job, no car, and a leaky roof? Mira's hands shook slightly as she clicked the message thread again. She stared at his last text. Noah deserves better than barely getting by. It didn't sound like a billionaire. It sounded like someone who'd been close to starving and never forgot it. She typed, then hesitated, then hit send. Why are you really doing this? He didn't answer right away. She waited 10 minutes, then 20. Her heart sank. Maybe he regretted it. Maybe he realized she wasn't worth it. Her phone finally lit up. Because I know what it's like to lose someone you can't save, and because no child should ever feel that kind of pain. She stared at those words, stunned. They weren't transactional. They weren't poetic either. They were just true, and they hurt.
I don't want your pity, she replied. It's not pity, he said. It's recognition. Mira leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. There was a beat of silence between them. Then her phone buzzed again. Do you work? That question hit like a jab. She almost didn't respond. I did, until Noah and the company folded, and the daycare I could afford shut down. So, no, not right now. What was your field? Biochem research, mostly diagnostics. I interned at Novagen before things got complicated. You were in research? Yeah, but I also know how to scrub toilets, make lattes, and calculate taxes I can't afford to pay. She didn't expect a reply to that, but he surprised her. Come by Helix Core tomorrow, 11 a.m. Ask for Ava. No strings, just a conversation. Mira blinked. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to take one back. Mira hadn't been inside a downtown office tower in almost 2 years. The last time she walked into a corporate lobby, she was wearing heels that blistered her toes and a badge that said temporary contractor. Today, she was wearing her cleanest jeans, a thrifted blouse, and a blazer she hadn't zipped since before her pregnancy. She tightened her grip on Noah's carrier and stepped through the rotating glass doors. The Helix Core lobby was nothing like she expected. No marble, no ego, just clean lines, high ceilings, and a quiet efficiency that made her feel instantly underdressed. The receptionist looked up as she approached. "Hi, I'm Mira Jensen. I'm here to see Ava." The woman's face lit up with immediate recognition, which unsettled her more than she cared to admit. "Of course, you're expected. 37th floor. Ms. Lin will meet you at the elevator." Mira blinked. Expected? She followed the path to the elevator, eyes darting to the logos on the wall, the awards behind glass, the silent but busy energy of the place. This wasn't a startup pretending to be important. This was important. By the time the elevator doors slid open on the top floor, her heart was pounding. A woman in her mid-40s, with sleek black hair and a tablet in hand, greeted her with a warm but professional smile. "Mira, I'm Ava Lin, Chief of Staff to Mr. Albright. He's in meetings at the moment, but he asked me to give you a tour and answer any questions." Mira followed her through a hallway lined with glass offices and subtle security cameras. "I'm not sure what this is," Mira said finally. "This whole thing feels like a setup for a punchline." Ava smiled. "Mr. Albright doesn't do punchlines. He does precision." They stopped at a wide conference room with a view of the skyline. "He told me to show you this first," Ava said, unlocking the door. Inside, it wasn't a workspace. It was a fully furnished nursery, a crib in the corner, a small changing table, soft rugs, toys, even blackout curtains. Mira's hand flew to her mouth. Ava's voice was soft. "He thought it might help you feel more comfortable." Mira stepped inside, heart aching. The room wasn't expensive for the sake of it. It was thoughtful. Every detail said one thing clearly. Someone had paid attention. She turned back to Ava. "Why?" Ava's gaze held hers. "Because he knows what it feels like to walk in alone." Mira didn't know what to say. Ava offered a small smile. "Would you like some coffee?" 20 minutes later, Mira sat in a smaller meeting room with a fresh mug in front of her, Noah asleep in the carrier beside her. The door opened quietly, and she looked up just as Jackson walked in. Seeing him in person hit harder than she expected. He looked exactly like the photos, tall, composed, expensive, but somehow more real. Tired eyes, slight stubble, a man who had built empires but hadn't smiled in a long time. "Mira," he said as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Thanks for coming." She stood awkwardly, unsure of what to do with her hands. "I wasn't sure if I should." "You came anyway. That's what matters." He sat across from her, resting his forearms on the table. "Before we talk about anything else, I want to be clear. You owe me nothing. This isn't a test. I'm not here to rescue you. I don't believe in charity, but I do believe in investing in people." Mira stared at him. "Why me?" Jackson looked down for a moment, then up. "Because I saw someone who didn't ask for a shortcut, who didn't expect anything, who was willing to go without before they let their kids suffer. And because someone like that I'd trust with anything." Mira felt her throat tighten. He slid a folder across the table. Temporary position, 3 months, finance, audit, support, flexible hours, work on site or remote. Pay is more than fair, and if it's not a fit, you walk. No questions. Mira opened the folder and blinked at the number on the offer line. It was more than she made in 6 months at her old job. She looked at him. "This is real?" "It is." She glanced down at Noah, then back at Jackson. "And the nursery?" He smiled, just barely. "Also real." For a moment they just sat there, in quiet understanding. Finally, Mira nodded once. "I'll take it." Mira showed up on her first official day wearing the only business casual outfit she hadn't already donated during last winter's rent panic. The pants were a little tighter than she remembered, but they buttoned, and that was enough. She kept her hair pulled back, minimal makeup, and slipped into the building with Noah tucked against her chest in a soft gray sling. No one stared. That surprised her. She half expected side eyes, whispers, or polite but cold smiles, but the woman at the reception desk greeted her with a kind welcome back, as if she'd worked there before. The elevator to the top floor opened the moment she approached. Ava met her with coffee already in hand. "Noah's space is ready," Ava said, not missing a beat as she walked her down the hallway, "and yours is just across the glass. You'll have full access to internal systems. I'll set you up. Let me know if you run into any trouble." Mira blinked. "That's it?" Ava smiled. "That's it."
The office they let her into was modest but sleek, a wide desk, dual monitors, and a chair so ergonomic it felt like cheating. Behind her, a glass partition looked into the nursery. Noah was already cooing at a set of plush blocks on the rug, oblivious to how drastically his world had shifted. Mira sat down slowly, hands hovering over the keyboard. She hadn't worked in over a year. She hadn't touched an internal audit system since her final project before maternity leave, the one that never got finished because the company folded without warning. As she opened her inbox, reviewed the file directories, and pulled up the company's audit logs, something familiar stirred in her chest. Her brain clicked back into gear. She knew what to look for. Baseline deviations, inconsistencies between submitted and verified invoices, patterns of internal transfers that didn't match project activity. It was like brushing off an old instrument and remembering the tune. She worked quietly for over an hour, only stopping when she noticed someone standing outside her office. Jackson. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just a black button-down, sleeves rolled, slacks. Still looked like he belonged in a magazine. "May I?" he asked. She nodded. "It's your company." He stepped inside, glanced through the glass at Noah, then turned to her screen. "Settling in? Okay." "I haven't broken anything yet," she said. "Give it time," she smirked before catching herself. He looked at the monitor. "You're already in the reconciliations folder. I figured I'd start with the third quarter reports. There's a few inconsistencies in vendor payouts that don't match project records." Jackson tilted his head. "You found that already?" She shrugged. "They're not well hidden." His expression changed. Not surprised, but something more thoughtful. "Anything feel off to you?" he asked. Mira hesitated. "I've only been in the system an hour, but yeah, either someone's rounding in ways that make no sense, or someone's hiding something in the noise." Jackson's jaw tightened just slightly. "You don't have to dig deep yet. Start surface level." "Right," Mira said, "except I don't do surface level." He nodded once. "Neither do I." Then he turned and walked out. That afternoon, Ava brought her lunch without asking. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, iced tea. Mira was mid-bite when a ping came in through the internal messenger. "Keep this just between us. If you find something that doesn't look right, bring it directly to me. No one else. Not even Ava. Understood?" Mira stared at the screen. "You expect me to find something?" "I expect you to see things others won't." She sat back in her chair and looked through the glass at Noah. He was curled up asleep with a tiny stuffed fox tucked under his chin. The sun lit up the soft edges of his hair, and for the first time in months, Mira didn't feel like she was running behind the world. She was catching up, or maybe finally stepping into the right place. By her second week at Helix, by Friday, Mira had built a rhythm. Mornings started with black coffee, a kiss to Noah's forehead, and a silent promise to stay ahead of whatever curveball life had cued next. She arrived early, usually before Ava, sometimes even before Jackson, and always checked on Noah first. He had adjusted to the nursery faster than she had to her office. Every day, she'd find him nestled in the corner with a rotating cast of plush animals and an endless supply of organic snacks. Mira, on the other hand, was deep in spreadsheets, audit logs, and data trails. She didn't treat this job like a lifeline, she treated it like a mission. It was the only way she knew how to work, with precision, with care, and with the kind of focus that blocked out everything else. By Friday afternoon, she found it. It wasn't a smoking gun, it never was, but there was a pattern. The same vendor name repeated just enough. The amounts varied, always under internal audit thresholds, but they all shared a strange trait. They were tied to non-existent project codes. Mira leaned closer to her screen, double-checking. The vendor didn't match any real division, and yet the payments had been processed, approved, and quietly buried under a dozen legitimate transactions. $1,200 here, $2,400 there. Never enough to set off alerts, but over the course of a fiscal quarter, they added up. Mira copied the vendor code into a private folder and began cross-referencing. The payments weren't going to any standard operating account. They were routed through a third-party holding company in Delaware. Mira recognized the structure instantly. It was a shell, legal on paper, untouchable without higher-level access. Her stomach tightened.
Someone inside Helix Core was siphoning funds, slowly, strategically, and they were good at hiding it. Too good. She didn't call Ava. She didn't loop in finance. She remembered Jackson's message clearly. Bring it directly to me, no one else. Mira copied the files to a flash drive, encrypted the folder, and slipped it into her bag. Then she messaged him. I need 5 minutes. It's important. Jackson's office looked out over half the city. The windows stretched floor to ceiling, but the curtains were drawn. His desk was surprisingly bare. A single tablet, a leather notepad, a framed photo turned slightly toward the wall. He glanced up when she stepped in. You found something? He said, not asked. Mira noted and handed him the drive. It's not confirmed, but it's enough to raise questions. He plugged the drive into the side of his monitor and scrolled. She watched his expression shift slightly at first, then deeper, more concentrated. You pulled this from Q3? Yes, but it spans earlier quarters. The vendor doesn't exist. The payments route through a shell account in Delaware, masked under smaller invoices. Jackson leaned back, exhaled through his nose. You're right, it's clean. Too clean. Which means whoever did it knows the system. Knows it well, Jackson said. Probably helped design the controls. Mira crossed her arms. You already suspected something. He looked at her. I've been watching the numbers drift since late last year, but I couldn't get anyone in finance to chase it. Too subtle, too easy to explain away. So why not bring in an outside firm? He hesitated. I don't know who I can trust. Mira felt that settle in her chest like a weight. She understood that kind of isolation, the kind that came after losing too much and trusting too fast.
Hollowed you out, made you second guesses everything, everyone. So what now? She asked. I want you to keep going, Jackson said. Keep digging, but quietly. No names, no email trails, and if anyone asks, you're still reconciling back-end billing records. Mira tilted her head. You're asking me to investigate your own company? I'm asking you to find the truth. She held his gaze. And if I find something ugly? Jackson didn't blink. Then we deal with it. That night, Mira lay awake staring at the ceiling. Noah curled against her side. She replayed the conversation in her head again and again, trying to shake the unease that clung to it. She wasn't afraid of digging. She wasn't even afraid of what she might find. What worried her most was what she'd already seen in Jackson's face. He already knew. He just didn't want to admit it. The next morning, Mira woke before her alarm, not to Noah's cries, but to silence, the kind of silence that felt heavy. She checked his crib, still asleep, arms overhead, his lips pursed into a tiny frown like he was busy negotiating with his dreams. Mira brushed her teeth in the kitchen sink. Her bathroom faucet had started leaking again, but she hadn't called maintenance. She didn't want strangers in her space. Not now. Not when she was part of something she barely understood. By 7:30 a.m., she was already at her desk on the 37th floor, reviewing the vendor logs again. This time, she dug deeper. The shell company receiving the siphoned funds had a name, Trinox Solutions, LLC. It meant nothing to her, but when she ran the tax ID through an open business registry, the address pinged back to a downtown mailbox drop and listed a single executive agent. No public names, just a firm that specialized in anonymity. Mira sat back, fingers tightening around her coffee mug. This wasn't some lazy embezzlement. Whoever was behind this had designed it to run unnoticed for years. It wasn't greed, it was planned extraction. At 9:06 a.m., Jackson walked into her office without knocking. Trucks, she said before he could sit. He raised an eyebrow. You found it? It's a holding shell, no employees, registered through a legal blind. I traced 4 separate payments this month, routed through different department budgets, all under compliance thresholds. It's sophisticated, precise. Jackson said nothing. He looked tired again, like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked and his phone was still in his hand. I need you to keep this on your machine only, he said. No backups, no external transfers. Mira nodded, then leaned forward slightly. Jackson, how long have you suspected this? He looked at her, jaw set. Long enough to know whoever's behind it doesn't care about the company or the people working here. You think it's someone close to you? I know it is. Mira hesitated. "Why haven't you gone to the board?" "Because at least 2 of them are compromised. They've already shut down one internal audit. If I make the wrong move, it blows up." Mira's throat tightened. "So why me?" Jackson finally sat down across from her. "Because you don't owe anyone here anything, and you don't scare easy." The way he said it wasn't flattery. It was truth. It felt like someone had finally seen her. Not just the mother, not just the woman trying to survive, but her. The sharp, quiet force she used to be before life knocked her down hard enough to leave marks. "I want to show you something," Jackson said. He pulled a folder from his coat and slid it across the table. She opened it. A face stared back at her. Mid-40s, clean-cut, sharp suit, neutral smile. "Vincent Harmon," Jackson said, "Chief Financial Officer." Mira froze. "I've heard the name. Isn't he—" "He was hired 2 years ago after the last CFO resigned unexpectedly. He pushed through changes to our internal systems, gave his own team exclusive oversight over certain divisions, and quietly removed several cross-check protocols. Nobody blinked because he did it under the umbrella of streamlining compliance." Mira closed the folder. "You think he's behind it?" "I know he is, but proving it? That's the hard part. You want me to find the crack?" "Exactly." Mira nodded slowly. "And when I do, then we move." He stood to leave but paused in the doorway. "By the way, Noah has fans in the nursery." She blinked. "What?" "He gave my assistant a lecture yesterday when she tried to take his giraffe. It was 4 babbled syllables and a death stare." Mira laughed before she could stop herself. Jackson smiled, a small, warned thing, and then he was gone. That afternoon, Mira worked through lunch. She ran more matches, cross-referenced internal memos. She found one email chain where Vincent's assistant requested override access to procurement logs under the guise of executive audit preparation. The date matched the first recorded transfer to Trinox. She copied it, encrypted it, and added it to a growing folder labeled Proof. By 5 p.m., her eyes burned. She stretched, walked into the nursery, and sank into the soft armchair beside Noah's crib. He was napping again, his thumb in his mouth, his other hand still gripping the tail of the toy giraffe like a weapon. Mira rested her head against the back of the chair. It was quiet, safe. She hadn't felt that way in a long time, and that scared her more than anything else. Mira never trusted silence anymore. Not in the nursery, not in an elevator, and definitely not inside corporate systems built to hide the truth. Because silence usually meant someone was hiding something. By Monday morning, she had documented 15 payments tied to Trinox Solutions, each routed through a different department, each one signed off by a different lower-level approver. Whoever set it up had built a machine, not a mistake. But Mira wasn't hunting mistakes. She was chasing patterns, and this one had fingerprints. She waited until Noah was fed and settled in the nursery before stepping into Jackson's office. She didn't knock. He'd stopped expecting her to. He was at his desk reading a contract, but the moment he saw her face, he pushed it aside. "You found more?" "Yes, and I think I figured out how they're hiding it." She handed him a printed report, each page tagged with highlighted notes and system timestamps. "I cross-checked every account routed through Trinox with employee IDs. The payment approvals all come from different logins, but the access point every single time is the same device ID, which means someone's using ghost credentials," Jackson finished, "either duplicating or hijacking existing users to sign off." Mira nodded. "They're not forging data, they're borrowing real logins. That's why your auditors missed it. Everything checks out at the surface. Except it's all a lie," he said quietly. She watched his face carefully. There was no panic, no outburst, just the stillness of someone adding a final piece to a puzzle he never wanted to see completed. "What do you want to do next?" she asked. Jackson leaned back in his chair. "We need confirmation. Evidence that can't be rewritten or deleted. Someone inside has to know more than they've admitted, and I know where to start." He picked up his phone and dialed. "Ava, I need Vincent Harmon scheduled for a check-in tomorrow. Keep it casual, mid-morning, just me and him." Mira stiffened. "You're bringing him here? If we spook him, he shuts it all down."
If we wait too long, he finds a way to make us the story. He looked at her. You okay with that? I'm the one who walked in the fire. I'm not backing out now. He didn't smile, but something in his eyes softened. You know, he said, most people in your position would have taken the paycheck and played it safe. Mira raised her eyebrows. Yeah, well, I stopped being most people the day I handed a bottle of watered-down formula to my son and pretended it was enough. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, poring over the backup logs of Helix Core's internal messaging system. She knew she was getting close, and close was dangerous. She'd seen enough stories. Whistleblowers shut out, data wiped, good people discredited by people more powerful than they'd ever be. And yet, she wasn't afraid of that. She was afraid of failing Noah, of letting someone like Vincent Harmon take money that could have gone to research, to development, to employees, to single moms like her who didn't get secret phone calls from billionaires. midnight, her phone buzzed. Still awake? Obviously. You should sleep. You should follow your own advice. We're going to get him, but when we do, things are going to get noisy. I want you ready. I'm always ready. I just never had backup for. There was no reply, but a few seconds later, a single message came through. You do now. The meeting was set for 10 a.m. sharp. Mira sat at her desk, her stomach in a slow churn. Noah was napping peacefully in the nursery behind her, completely unaware that in just a few minutes, a man who had siphoned millions right under this building's nose was about to sit across from the CEO of the company he'd quietly been bleeding dry. Jackson had told her to stay in her office, but to monitor the security feed. She pulled it up on her second monitor, adjusted the angle to the conference room one floor below, and waited. It felt strange being in the room, but not in the room. She wasn't watching a screen, she was watching a moment that would determine the next chapter of both their lives. At exactly 10 a.m., the door opened. Vincent Harmon walked in with the ease of a man who believed the world owed him something. He wore a navy blue suit, tailored perfectly, and an expression that hovered between casual boredom and polite confidence. Jackson was already seated. There was no handshake. Mira leaned in closer.
Appreciate you making time, Jackson said, voice steady. Of course, Vincent replied smoothly. I always make time for the boss. Mira studied his face. She'd seen that expression before, in job interviews, in boardrooms, even in line at daycare pickup. It was the look of someone who already believed they were 3 moves ahead. I've been reviewing some of the quarterly financials, Jackson said, and I've noticed a few oddities. Vincent tilted his head. We've streamlined quite a bit this year, maybe too fast. That's on me. Growing pains. Jackson nodded once. Streamlined is one word for it. Mira could feel the tension building, quiet but sharp. There's a vendor, Jackson continued. Try Solutions. You're familiar? Vincent barely blinked. Doesn't ring a bell. Is that facilities or security? Apparently both, and also research and legal. Interesting for a company no one can seem to contact directly. Vincent smiled, then, just slightly. I'll have my team look into it, he offered. You are your team, Jackson said. You approve those payments for the first time. Vincent didn't respond right away. Jackson leaned forward. I know what you've been doing. I have the logs, device IDs, login footprints, shell account structures. You've been moving money through dummy vendors and distributing it through ghost pipelines, and you thought no one would notice. Vincent's mouth twitched. Mira couldn't tell if it was irritation or amusement. You've been listening to your new pet accountant a little too closely, he said. Mira's stomach dropped. He knew. Jackson didn't flinch. Her name is Mira, and she saw what you were hoping everyone else would ignore. Vincent laughed quietly. And let me guess, you two have been bonding late at night over spreadsheets and baby bottles? Mira's pulse spiked. Her hands curled into fists under the desk. Jackson's voice dropped. Calm, controlled. You're done, Vince. No, Vincent said, smile returning. You're done. The words hung in the air like a switchblade. Vincent reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. He set it on the table between them. You think you're the only one who's been collecting data? Come on, Jackson, you're not that naive. The board's tired of your secret projects and PR disasters. They're tired of your moods, your grief. You made the company vulnerable. I just helped it survive." Mira leaned closer to the screen, breath caught. Jackson's jaw tightened. "What's on the drive?" "Emails, messages, financials that look like mismanagement, that suggest you've been diverting funds to cover personal liabilities, which, by the way, we both know you haven't. But perception matters more than truth when you're on the chopping block. And you're giving it to me because I'm not. I'm warning you. You've got until Friday to resign. Quietly. I've already spoken to 2 board members. They'll back me. Walk away, and I won't bring Mira into this. She gets a nice severance and a silent exit. Everyone wins." Mira sat frozen. Jackson stared at him. Then quietly, "You underestimate me." "No," Vincent said as he stood, buttoning his jacket. "I understand you better than anyone else in this building. You built something great, but you're too human now, and human doesn't survive here." He walked out without waiting for a response. Mira closed the feed and leaned back in her chair. Her heart was racing, her face felt hot, and all she could think was one thing. They were at war now, and Vincent Harmon played dirty. Jackson didn't return to his office after the meeting with Vincent. For 2 hours, Mira stared at the closed conference room feed, but there was nothing left to see. No movement, no sounds, just an empty table and the ghost of a conversation that changed everything. She couldn't sit still anymore. She printed out her report, the one with every documented transfer, every ghost approval, and every shell account tied to Trinox. Then she walked the hallway, heart pounding, and entered Jackson's office without knocking. He was there, back to her, standing at the window with the blinds drawn halfway, watching the city like he was waiting for it to collapse. He didn't turn when she spoke. "I saw everything." Jackson didn't flinch. His voice was low. "You weren't supposed to." Mira walked closer. "You really think I'd just sit at my desk and not watch what happened in that room?" He turned then, slowly, his face unreadable. "I told you this would get ugly. You didn't say he'd try to destroy you." Jackson looked tired in a way she hadn't seen before. Not physically, not just grief. It was the weariness of someone who had finally confirmed that the worst person he suspected was exactly who he feared, and worse, had the power to get away with it.
"He has the board. Then take the fight public and put the company at risk. The thousands of people who rely on it, the research we've invested in for years. If I move too soon, he spins it. I look like the unstable billionaire clinging to control. You look like the woman I manipulated to cover my own mistakes." Mira's throat tightened. "Then we find proof he can't spin." Jackson studied her face. "You're still in?" "I was in the moment I figured out the math didn't add up." He stepped forward, picked up the report from her hand, flipped through it in silence. When he finished, he looked up. "I have one last card to play. It's not guaranteed to work, and it's risky." Define risky. "I've been working with someone off the books, former FBI forensic accountant. She's helped me track internal corruption quietly, but if we bring her in now, it won't stay quiet." "And you trust her with the truth?" "Yes." "Then bring her in." Jackson hesitated. "This only works if we all play our part. She'll need full access to the logs, everything you found. And if Vincent catches even a whiff of what we're doing, he'll come after you." Mira didn't blink. "Let him try." That night, the safe house wasn't just a contingency plan. It was real. Jackson handed her an access code, a private residence owned under a subsidiary company located in a quiet part of the city, already stocked with essentials. Mira didn't ask how. She didn't need to. She packed lightly, just clothes for her and Noah, the laptop, the flash drives, and a copy of the report. Noah fussed when she moved him into his carrier, but settled as soon as she held him against her chest. He could always tell when she was tense. The apartment was small, but clean, safe, quiet. Mira sat Noah down in the portable crib, already waiting in the corner. Then she sank onto the edge of the couch, scrolling through her phone, wondering what came next. She didn't have to wait long. A message came through from Jackson. "Jackson, her name is Keller. She'll call you in 10 minutes. Pick up. Don't tell her anything you can't prove. She's sharp, but she tests people." Mira replied with one word: "Ready." 10 minutes later, the phone rang. "Miss Jensen?" The voice on the other end was crisp, female, and all business. Yes, this is Keller. Jackson tells me you're the one who found the break in the flow. I'm the one who noticed. He's the one who knew something was wrong. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Leave nothing out. Mira took a breath and started talking. She told her everything, how it began with a text to the wrong number, how she never meant to get involved, how she saw the same things others missed, and how that turned into this moment. By the time she finished, Keller was silent. Then came the response, "You're good. Better than most auditors I've worked with, and if even half of what you've told me is supported by the files Jackson sent me, we have enough to not only bury Vincent, but pull apart everyone protecting him. So what happens next? We verify, then we bait the trap." Mira was running on adrenaline and black coffee. It had been 36 hours since Vincent's threat, and less than 12 since her call with Keller. She hadn't told anyone she was in the safe house, not even Ava. Jackson had kept it that tight, that contained. But inside, Mira was already building a strategy. Keller had been relentless during the call. She wanted timestamps, device IDs, access logs, emails. She wanted everything Mira had, and more. Mira didn't flinch. She handed it all over, every folder, every encrypted backup, even her personal notes. She knew what was at stake. Now it was time to draw Vincent out. Keller had a plan, and it started with a leak. That morning, Mira received a file marked Draft Memo Internal Realignment, supposedly from HR. It looked official. It said that due to upcoming compliance evaluations, there would be an internal audit review of all executive-level vendor contracts. The memo wasn't real. It was bait. The memo was loaded into the Helix core system under a path Vincent's assistant had access to. Then they waited. Jackson didn't sit still. He stayed moving, checking in with Keller, working through secure channels, pressing the remaining allies on the board to stall any vote of no confidence. Ava, quiet but loyal, was working 2 phones, pretending nothing had changed. Mira stayed off company messaging, logging in only through VPN from the safe house. By noon, Keller sent a message. "We got a ping. Memo was accessed 3 times in 2 hours, twice from Vincent's team, once from Vincent's own login. He knows." Mira stared at the screen. "What's he gonna do?" "We're about to find out." 3 hours later, Jackson called. His voice was quiet but urgent. "He's making his move." What did he do? He submitted an emergency ethics complaint to the board, claimed I bypassed finance, moved funds into personal accounts to bribe an external hire. You, Miralter. Chest tighten. He actually named me? He wants you gone first. It's his
Pattern. Isolate, discredit, remove. He's betting the board won't question it if it comes from internal concern. She sat down hard on the arm of the couch. And will they? Some might, but not all. Not if we go first, Jackson paused. You ready to do this publicly? Mira looked at Noah asleep in his crib. She thought about the nights without power, the watered-down formula, the kindness of a stranger that was never really about charity, but about belief. I've never been more ready. The press release hit at 6:43 p.m. Helix Core investigates high-level financial misconduct. It was short, precise, approved by legal. It didn't name Vincent Harmon directly, but it referenced forensic irregularities, misappropriation of vendor payments, and a full internal audit triggered by external validation. The same minute it went live, Keller's team handed their findings to the state attorney's office. 38 pages of documentation, system logs, verified approvals, and email threads that led back to Vincent Harmon. It was over, almost. At 8:05 p.m., Mira's phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered. "Impressive," Vincent said. "I underestimated you." Mira didn't speak. "I wanted to destroy Jackson." "You? You were just a name on a report, an accident, and somehow you became a problem." "Funny," Mira said, voice steady. "That's how most women in power get noticed, by becoming inconvenient." Vincent laughed, a dry sound. "You think this ends here?" "I know it does." He paused. "You won't win, Mira. Jackson may crawl out of this, but you're disposable. Always have been." She hung up. She didn't need to hear the rest. That night, Mira watched the news in silence. Noah slept beside her. Jackson hadn't texted again. Not yet.
She knew he was somewhere, bracing for whatever came next, but she felt calm because she knew what was coming, and this time she wasn't afraid of it. By morning, everything was different. Mira didn't need to check the news to know it. She felt it in the way her phone buzzed with back-to-back missed calls, in the encrypted messages Keller sent her marked read only, in the way her inbox had transformed overnight from silence into fire. The Helix Core press release had gone viral. Finance blogs, tech media, even national outlets were buzzing with speculation. A whistleblower, secret audit, executive corruption. One article mentioned a single mother with a background in forensic accounting who uncovered the breach. They didn't name her, but they would, sooner or later. Ava texted at 8:02 a.m. "Ava, be ready. He's coming for a final meeting. Private, 9 a.m. top floor. Just him and Jackson." Mira stared at the message. "Mira, should I be there?" Ava, "Jackson says no. I say yes. Stay back, but don't leave." Mira dressed carefully, neutral tones, nothing flashy, and slipped into the building through the secondary entrance Keller's team had cleared. She took the private elevator straight to the nursery suite where Noah was already waiting, his favorite stuffed fox in one hand, his juice cup in the other, babbling to the daycare assistant like she worked for him. At 9:01 a.m., she opened her laptop and pulled up the live internal feed. The conference room was silent. Jackson sat at the end of the table, calm, controlled. Vincent entered a moment later, expression blank. Mira watched every detail, his walk, his jaw, the way his hand hovered for just a second too long before pulling out a chair. "Let's save each other the posturing," Vincent said. "I know what this is." "Then you know why you're here," Jackson replied. "I'm here because you'd rather burn the company to the ground than let someone else fix it. You didn't fix it. You hijacked it. You bled it dry. I kept it alive when you were too consumed by grief to lead." Mira felt her stomach twist. It wasn't the insult. It was how calm he said it, how rehearsed it sounded. "You built your whole career off other people's blind spots," Jackson said. "You targeted me because you knew I was distracted, but you didn't count on someone else watching." Vincent leaned forward. "You mean her? The woman you plucked from poverty and handed a desk like some redemption project? You think anyone will believe her over me?" "I don't need them to believe her," Jackson said. "I have the data. I have the paper trail. I have federal agents who signed off on every piece of it. She didn't just notice, she proved it." Mira didn't move. Her hands were cold against the keyboard. Noah's soft humming behind her grounded her. Vincent stood. "This is a mistake." "No," Jackson said, rising slowly. "The mistake was thinking you were untouchable." Ava stepped into the frame next, calm as ever. "Gentlemen, I believe you've both said what you needed to. Security will escort Mr. Harmon out. His badge has already been deactivated." Vincent's mouth opened, closed. For the first time, Mira saw something break in his expression. He turned without another word and left. By 10:14 a.m., it was over. Officially, Vincent Harmon was placed on leave pending investigation. The board, blindsided by the speed of the evidence, voted unanimously to suspend all finance operations related to his tenure. Keller's team had everything they needed to move forward with federal charges. Mira stood at the nursery window, arms crossed, watching the city exhale. A quiet knock made her turn. Jackson. He looked like he hadn't slept again, but he was smiling, just barely. "You were right," he said. "About you don't scare easy?" She shook her head. "Neither do you." He stepped inside. Noah spotted him and toddled over, hands raised, a grin wide across his face. Without hesitation, Jackson scooped him up. "How's my partner in crime?" he asked. Noah babbled something unintelligible but enthusiastic. "I want you to take tomorrow off," Jackson said to Mira. "Rest. Spend time with him. You've earned it. And the day after tomorrow?" He looked at her. "I want to offer you something permanent. Head of internal audit. Full autonomy, direct report to me. Build your own team. Set your own rules." Mira stared at him. "That's a big job." "So is what you just did." She didn't answer right away, but the answer was already forming.
The next morning, Mira didn't wake to an alarm or the low buzz of system notifications. She woke to sunlight bleeding through the cheap blinds in the safe house bedroom and the steady rise and fall of Noah's breathing beside her. For the first time in months, her body didn't tense the moment her eyes opened. There was no rush, no impending disaster. She let herself stay still for a moment, watching Noah's tiny hand resting on her chest, curled in sleep. The softness of it grounded her more than any paycheck or title ever had. By the time she made coffee and stepped out onto the apartment's small balcony, her phone was already buzzing. News outlets had picked up the story in full. Vincent Harmon's face was plastered across headlines in every financial blog she could name. Whistleblower exposes multi-million-dollar fraud at Helix Corp was trending. Her name hadn't been used officially, but her inbox was filling up with interview requests, LinkedIn messages, and one strange email from a corporate publisher asking if she was considering writing a memoir. She wasn't. She didn't want a spotlight. She just wanted her life back. Or maybe, for the first time, to build a new one. At noon, Jackson called. "You holding up?" he asked. Mira glanced at the TV, where another panel of talking heads debated how a CEO had taken down his own CFO. "I'm okay, just weird being the center of a storm you didn't choose." "You did choose it," Jackson said. "You just didn't realize that until after you were in it." She smiled. "I guess that's true." There was a pause on the line, and then he spoke again, more carefully this time. "I wasn't going to say this over the phone, but I think I'd regret not saying it at all." Mira's breath caught slightly. "I don't know what happens next for the company, for me, but I know I trust you, and I don't say that easily." She sat down slowly. "I trust you too," she said, "more than I ever expected to." Another pause. Longer. "I'd like to see you," he said, "if you're up for it." Mira glanced at Noah, who was trying to stack plastic cups into a tower that immediately collapsed. "I think we're ready to come back." The reunion wasn't dramatic. It wasn't slow motion or cinematic. It was quiet. Mira stepped into the Helix Corp lobby carrying Noah, both of them dressed simply, neutrally. A few employees nodded at her, but no one stared. Ava greeted her with a warm smile and handed her a badge with her new title already printed. Mira Jensen, Director, Internal Audit. Ava led her to the elevator. As the doors closed, Mira turned slightly. "Does he know I'm coming up?" "He's been watching the time since 7 a.m., Ava said with a small grin. Jackson was standing at the window again when she entered his office. He turned as she stepped in. No tie today, shirt sleeves rolled, eyes tired but brighter than she remembered. "You came back," he said. "I wasn't gone," she answered. He looked at Noah, who reached his arms out toward him immediately. Jackson stepped forward, picked him up, and held him without hesitation. Mira watched, something deep in her chest tightening and loosening at the same time. "You kept your promise," she said. He glanced at her. "Which one?" "All of them." He nodded, then offered a quiet, sincere reply. "Let's make some new ones." 3 weeks later, Mira found herself walking into a boardroom as the lead. Not someone's assistant, not the girl who stumbled into a job she didn't deserve, not the charity case or the wrong number story everyone whispered behind glass walls. She was the woman who exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud, helped save one of the most valuable tech firms in the country, and did it while raising a baby on her own, with a bottle in one hand and a folder full of evidence in the other, and she wasn't scared anymore. The board meeting was short. Keller had already briefed them, and Ava had prepped the financial summaries. Mira's role was clear, direct, professional, concise. "This is the internal compliance framework moving forward," Mira said, clicking through a clean, minimal slide deck. Transparent, decentralized, triple audited. No one, not even the CEO, can bypass it without leaving a trail. She didn't look at Jackson when she said it, but she felt him watching. Afterward, one of the senior board members, someone who had voted against Jackson weeks earlier, stopped Mira outside the conference room. "You did something rare," he said. "You did your job so well it made the rest of us look sloppy." Mira smiled, not out of pride, but out of knowing. "I wasn't trying to look good. I was trying to keep my kids safe." The man nodded. "That's even rarer." That night she stayed late, not because she had to, but because it felt good to work in silence again, to run final checks to make sure nothing had slipped. The office lights did.
Auto. But she didn't mind. She was reviewing a vendor log when a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Shouldn't you be home by now?" Mira looked up. Jackson leaned against the doorway, coffee in one hand, the other tucked into his pocket. He wasn't in CEO mode. He was in him mode, slightly disheveled, quietly observing, showing up without needing a reason. "You told me to build the system," Mira said. "I'm building it." He walked in and set the coffee down next to her. "Come on," he said. "Let's get out of here." She raised an eyebrow. "And go where?" "Anywhere you want." They didn't go far, just downstairs, just outside, just to a quiet street where the city felt a little less like a machine and a little more like something alive. They walked in silence for a while. Mira was the first to break it. "Do you ever think about how weird this all is?" Jackson gave a half smile. "Which part? Me? You. This whole thing starting because I typed a number wrong." "I don't think that was weird," he said. She looked over. "I think it was the first right thing that happened in a long time." Mira exhaled and, for once, didn't argue. Mira stood in front of the mirror in the new apartment, buttoning the last clasp on the necklace she hadn't worn in almost 2 years. It was simple, a small silver circle on a thin chain. Her sister gave it to her before she passed. For a long time, it had stayed buried in a drawer, forgotten under unpaid bills and medical forms. But tonight felt right. Noah was in his new pajamas, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a spoon in one hand and applesauce smeared across his chin like war paint. Mira smiled as she wiped his face, and laughed when he swatted her hand away. She didn't recognize this version of her life, not because it was perfect, it wasn't, but because it felt like hers. For the first time in years, she wasn't reacting to the next problem, she was building forward. Her name was on the lease, her bank account didn't give her anxiety, she had a key card that opened more than just opportunity, it opened a new chapter. Later that night, when Noah was asleep and the city had gone quiet outside the window, Mira sat on the couch with her laptop open. Her inbox had one unread message sent from a private internal account Jackson had created just for them. No subject line, just one file attachment. She clicked it. Inside was a screenshot of the very first message she'd ever sent him. Then, "I'm sorry to bother you again. I need $50 for formula. Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday. I'll pay you back, please." And below that, the reply, "I think you have the wrong number." She stared at it, her hand covering her mouth. Jackson had titled the file, "The Accident That Wasn't." A message appeared from him a moment later. "Jackson, thought you might want to keep that so you never forget what it took to find your way here." Mira typed back, "You still think it wasn't an accident? I think the universe is better at hiring people than HR." She laughed, sitting back, letting the warmth of the moment settle into her chest. After a few seconds, she typed one more message. "You ever think about what happens next?" "Every day." She waited, and then it came. "I'd like you and Noah in my life permanently, not just as a team, not just as coworkers, as mine, if you're ready." She read it twice, not because she doubted him, but because she'd never let herself picture the possibility this clearly. Then she smiled and replied, "Mira, ask me again in person." A minute later, her doorbell rang. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this unforgettable story. If Mira and Jackson's journey moved you, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Even greater, deeper stories are coming your way. Don't miss what's